Okay, folks, here we are. Here is the headline statistics for June 2022 for the average house prices in Scotland. Just out today from the Registers of Scotland, the publication's out. The average price point in Scotland is £192,249. That's a lot of money. Take the average salary in Scotland. Just let me do a quick calculation on my calculator. So the average salary is 192,123 divided by 31,000. It still makes it about 6 times the average salary. I mean, that's still quite tolerable in terms of the average price point for Scotland, 6 times. In the rest of the UK, it's quite a lot higher in terms of the number of prices, in terms of the number of times to the average salary. The average price change year on year for Scotland is 11.6%, and the average monthly change is 2.2%. So we're still not a negative growth. It just means it's slowing down. So the economic statement basically says Scotland house prices increased by 11.6% in the year to 2022, unchanged from the increase of 11.6% of the year in May 2022. On a non-seasonally adjusted basis, the average house price in Scotland increased by 2.2%. It's all right, they do seasonal adjusting to take into account the fluctuations in volume. Between May and June 2022. This is a statistical thing that's seasonally adjusted, unchanged from an increase of 2.2 during the same period in the earlier in May 2021 and June 2021. On a seasonally adjusted basis, the average house price in Scotland increased by 1.3% between May and June 2022. So again, we have not heard any negative growth as yet. Every single month, it's actually still been increasing. Okay, so in Scotland, let's talk about provisional estimates for June. Actually, let's look at the average price change. We'll quickly come back to that, but we'll look at the average price change over the last 5 years. Let's look at a wee graph. I love a wee graph. So at the last 5 years, we can see here in terms of prices in Scotland. You can see that here from June. And then you're sitting, it did go down to zero, and then it jumped up after the pandemic, and it's kind of never stopped. There is no surprise when you think about it if average prices and house prices go up and inflation goes up as well. Headline inflation today has actually been announced at 10.1%. The Bank of England expects headline inflation to go up to round about 13% before the end of the year. Again, we're coming back to saying it's probably just taking into account the normal increases in terms of how house prices are increasing and how everything else is increasing. And it's all catching up because we've had record low inflation rates for such a long period of time. So we're just getting all at once, and then it should flatten out again over the next successive years. So we've looked at the 5-year house price changes. In Scotland, the average price increases by 11.6% in June, unchanged from the norm of the one in May. Annual price change by local authority. Here we go here. Let's look at local authority now, and this will take into account Fife. So you can see some of the local authorities. Let's zoom in on that. So we'll zoom in on that, and you can see there, look at Aberdeenshire. Now, a lot of people actually think Aberdeenshire is actually decreasing in price, but it's actually still 10.8% year on year. This goes in conflict to Zoopla. Remember I said in the Zoopla house price report, it was actually reporting negative. That's because Zoopla is reporting what's on Zoopla only. This actually takes into account the whole of property transactions sold in Scotland for the whole of June up to June 2022. This is the Register of Scotland. It actually takes this into account. So this is the accurate, on-the-money data. Angus, 13.3%. Look at Argyll and Bute. 19% increase still at Argyll and Bute. You've got a 2 for City of Aberdeen. So City Aberdeen, City Centre, Aberdeenshire, 10.8%. City Aberdeen, still 2%. So that's the main central area. City of Dundee, 13%. You see a lot of ones. Clackmannanshire up 19% almost, but that's because their price point's sitting at 171,000. And then you see some of the rest. And look at East Ayrshire up 22% year on year. East Renfrewshire up 18%. Falkirk 17%. Fife, we're up 12.7%. Average price point in Fife is £167,578. Now, if we take the average salary in Fife and divide that, we'll get the multiplier to see where it is in comparison to the rest of them. So we've got 167, we were saying, 167, 578 divided by 30,000, about 5.5 times. So the number of the average salary to average property price is 5.5 times, whereas in the rest of in Scotland in its entirety it's 6 times or just over 6 times, which still makes Fife a more affordable place to live. And that represents Fife monthly change price year on year is 12.7%. Okay, so let's just scroll through that graph a wee bit more. Moray 17.3%, North Ayrshire 13%, and there. Scottish Borders, Highlands, South Ayrshire 17%, Stirling 13, 15. So right across Scotland, really, there's a huge amount. Orkney Islands, 29% in Orkney Islands. That's a huge amount. So that's where it is in terms of the price points. So my thoughts are on this. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask, because I'll just go over some of the other ones because you're getting this data just as quick as I am. Let's look at the next graph, which is the actual hotspots in Scotland. Now you can see that there. Look, you've got Edinburgh in the dark red. The top there is 230,000 or greater average price. So it seems to be over in Edinburgh. It seems to be in Perthshire as well. And that looks to be in Falkirk as well over here. Then you come into Fife. Fife is middle of the road, still very more affordable in comparison to the rest of the UK. You can see there's a few in blue below Fife, and that's in smaller areas. But generally, Fife is a really affordable place to live in terms of house prices. I mean, we go on about it all the time. This actually reinforces my thought process that people outside the area have larger house prices for similar types of houses, and it's all about location, location, location. So lockdown has taught them they no longer need to live where they are because they can work remotely. Most people actually are still continue to work remotely on occasion. So they can work remotely. So why would they want to live in a place where the cost of living is so high? That's why you find some people are actually choosing to relocate to the Fife area because it's more affordable to live. And plus the fact you're within an easy distance to things like the beaches, the golf courses, the parks, and the open countryside. And that's what people buy into. You don't get that in a city, really. And that's why most people are actually wanting to move to here. That means that Fife house prices will remain quite resilient because of the affordability and the fact that you've got people coming from outside. We're large. So if you're selling a 2-bedroom flat in Merchant City, for example, it's £450,000 for a 2-bedroom flat in Merchant City in Glasgow. What can you buy for £450,000 in Fife? More or less Fife itself, possibly. No, I'm just kidding. But you could get a huge chunk of property, couldn't you, for that? So why would you want to opt to still continue to stay in the middle of Glasgow in the Merchant City in a 2-bedroom flat if you could actually have a beautiful house and raise a family in the Fife area? So that's what some people are actually looking at and thinking, why do I need to actually stay in big cities? That then says to them that if I sell my 2-bedroom flat in Merchant City for 450,000 and I bought a 2-bedroom flat, say for example in St Andrews, it would probably be half that price. So that's why they're prepared to pay significantly more than the home report value for that type of property in Fife, because to them that's actually a really good price point. To us, because we're trading like for like, in other words, proportionately the same. If we sell a house here and buy a house within half a mile radius of where we've just sold, proportionately the price it's increased is exactly the same as what we've sold ours at as well. So it kind of makes no difference. You've not got any buying power over and above to pay for more than what that property is actually worth. Whereas somebody outside sells their property, they can easily pay a bit more because it's a lot less than what it is where they are proportionally. That makes the difference, and that's what makes Fife more affordable, and that's what will keep the Fife property market very, very resilient throughout. Just another couple of things Most expensive area to purchase, no surprise there, is still City of Edinburgh, where the average price is £327,000. In contrast to the cheapest area to purchase was Inverclyde, where the average cost and price was £116,000. Year on year, average price change for things like your detached properties. The difference, detached properties on average in Scotland have gone up 17% year on year, semi-detached 13%, terraced houses 11%, and flats and maisonette round about 7%. All in all, that makes up the 11.6% return. Sales volumes are actually quite resilient as well. In the Fife area, the number of sales volumes itself, Fife itself, year on year, in April, because they actually just use April, they've not got these statistics yet. The sales volumes in Fife were 561 versus 506 the year before, which means there's more sales actually happening year on year. Now, there's more properties coming into the market because we can see now more and more people are making decisions about bringing their property to market, and therefore there's an influx and oversupply of property right now. But I again expect that to level out because it's not sustainable, the number of properties coming on, and there's no apparent reason. I think it's now coming to the point that people see the opportunity of their dream home coming on because of the supply coming on, so therefore they're deciding to put their house on as well. So we're now seeing a normal influx and normal flow coming out of that process of a number of pent up housing stock, which people were just sitting on waiting for to come onto the market. It was a classic example we saw last year about the people were stuck where they were because it was, I'm not putting my house on the market till I actually sell, till I actually find my house to buy. And that's how people were. But guess what? The house that you were looking to buy, the exact same person was thinking exactly the same thing. So it was almost a stalemate in the property market. But now this is actually beginning to flow through. I think as well because of the impending cost of living crisis and the way the government's going on about an impending recession, that more and more people are deciding, well, we better get on with it now. And if you're thinking about selling now, I would absolutely agree, you better get on with it now because you've got a more certainty right now than you have got in 6 months' time, where the economy can be a completely different proposition. So get your house now, hold on to it. You'll probably stay in it for the next 5, maybe 10, maybe 15 years. So if there was a price drop in the short term, it will make no difference. I bought my house for 260,000 in the credit crunch. It dropped at the credit crunch. It lost a huge amount of value. I spent 100,000 on it doing it up, and it lost about 60,000 overnight. But my house is significantly recovered since then, and it's almost touching $500,000 now. So it just shows you time will sort that out completely. But it's like for like, and because proportionally then I'll just have to go and buy something else. And if it's in the same area, it will be the same price point, if that makes sense. So it's no different. So the house you're in is only ever really an asset if you understand what I mean by that. In other words, a monetary aspect to it. And if you're intending on selling it and going into rent accommodation, that's the only reason. Other than that, it's just a house to stay in, and it costs you money while you look after it. And if you want to trade up or trade down, at least you're proportionally the same value as everyone else in order to do that. If you take yourself off the housing market, then obviously you've got a bigger mountain to climb when prices go up, because then you've got to reach up to that again after exiting at a lower value proportionally. So hopefully that's given you a real good insight. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Emma. Good info, Jim. You are so kind. Share your knowledge, Reverend. Yep, happy. Thank you very much. I'm happy to do that. Sales volumes. So sales volumes over the last 5 years, as I said, have actually kept stable and maintained. We sell in Fife, all the estate agents, around about 6,500 every year. The number of properties right now, let's take a look at Zoopla. To give you an idea about where we are right now. I'll just get Zoopla up and share that screen with you. .co.uk. Let's look at Zoopla, and we'll just click on that. Just bear with me while I get onto the mainstream Zoopla, and I'll share the screen. And stop sharing that one, and then go on to share Zoopla, and just in here. Now, 2 or 3 months ago in Zoopla, we were reporting around about 550 properties on the market to sell. Sometimes it was around about 500, and that's 2 or 3 months ago. So this will show you where we are right now, and then I'll tell you why this should be the case. Now we've got 702 on the market now for available for sale. So that means the number of properties are actually increased by around about 100 to 150 overall over the last 2 or 3 months. And that's over and above what's actually been sold already in these last 2 or 3 months against what's been going on. So there's a surplus of 150 to 200 come on. Now, if we just took 150 and divided that by the 500, that's round about a 30% surplus. So there's a 30% oversupply of the existing properties on the market, but it's still an undersupply compared to the pre-pandemic levels, because pre-pandemic levels, even when the market was buoyant at that point in time, was round about the 1,200 mark, 1,200 properties on the market. Now, if you've got 700 properties on the market and you're selling 6,500 a year, if you take 700 and divide it by 6,500 and then multiply by the number of weeks, you get 5.6 weeks on average to sell. So you've got 700 properties in the market now, it's 6,500 that are sold every year, and it takes 5.6 weeks to sell. Now, in the times where it was 500 properties, it was taking round about 4 weeks to sell. So we've almost gone up 50% in the time to sell your property now than what it was 2 or 3 months ago. Albeit, I mean, there's the statistic. That's how the news does it. We've gone up 50% to sit more than the time before to sell. But the time before on average to sell was only 4 weeks. We've only gone up to 6 weeks. It's only an extra 2 weeks. And then if you put that in context, everybody goes, well, it's only an extra 2 weeks. That's all right. But if you say 50%, everybody panics. That's how the media gets you, by the way. Interest rates have gone up the largest amount in the last 27 years. They've only gone up to 1.75%. Put that into perspective. And yet, in the credit crunch, interest rates on average were around about 7%. So it's still very tolerable, the base rates right now in comparison to 2008. So you have to bear these in mind. Watch out for the nitty-gritty. Make sure you've got further evidence to support the facts rather than just listen to an initial soundbite. Remember, the news is there to sell news, and you know what sells. It's always negative news. They never want to tell you anything positive because everybody wants to know about the negative stuff. And that's all they want to tell you. So that's where we are right now in terms of the property market. If you've got any further questions, please feel free to to ask me these questions. You can private message me, you can put some in the comments. And until the next property update next month for the UK house prices, I'm Jim Parker for 5 Properties TV.